When I was young, my grandparents on my mother's side, Vincent and Bernice Lakin, lived just south of Algonquin, Illinois, on the Oatman Farm in Dundee, which is about 20 minutes west of the town where I lived, Barrington. Algonquin couldn't have been bigger than a couple thousand people back in the mid-70s, and was a farming town about 50 miles west and a little north of Chicago. Algonquin is nestled along the Fox River. My mother had grown up in Lily Lake on a farm, which was a small town, only about 20 miles south and west of Algonquin. My grandparents, my mother Linda and her sister Holly, they moved to Dundee when she was a teenager. My grandfather Vincent grew up in Elburn, Illinois, which was only 5 or so miles south of Lily Lake. My grandmother Bernice, her maiden name was Norman, she grew up near Mason City, Iowa. The farm in Dundee always held my imagination. It was about 1,000 acres, and my grandfather farmed both corn and soybeans. He had dairy cows. He had about 3 or 4 barns, and he had an older cement silo and some newer steel silos. He rented the farm from a neighbor, Mr. Bruner. I think my grandfather Lakin had a John Deere Model 4010 with a tricycle front end with dual wheels angled outward. I remember my brother Peter, who's about 18 months younger than I am. When I was maybe 9 and he was 7, in the spring we went out into a field to watch my grandfather preparing a field for seeding. My grandfather invited Peter and I up into the tractor, one at a time. Grandpa had us sit in his lap, and he drove slowly through the field with a hoe on the back, turning the soil and getting it ready to be planting. I remember watching my brother and my grandfather pull a wheelie on the tractor because they hit a big rock, and how exciting that looked. When it was finally my turn to go, we drove through the field, and I remember the smell of the overturned earth and just how full of life it smelled. I remember all the dust. I had hoped that we would also hit a rock and maybe we would pop a wheelie, but we never did. I remember once in the late summer, probably in August, just before school started, my family had gone out to visit my grandfather and grandmother. It was probably about 4:30 in the afternoon, and my brother and I were allowed to walk about 1.5 miles down to the Fox River on the far eastern edge of my grandfather's farm. Peter and I didn't want to walk back on the dirt road, so instead I talked my brother into walking through the cornfield. We picked a row in the cornfield and walked down it. I think we had some walking sticks that we had gotten from the forest down by the river. And I remember my brother and I knocked over some of the pieces of corn, trying to walk sideways across the rows to get to the road because walking in the cornfield was a little scary as it got darker. We didn't know how much trouble we'd get in. We didn't knock down too much corn. I remember feeling that we should start being more careful. I worried my grandfather might get upset at us. Peter and I talked about what story we might tell in case we got caught, and we decided we would say that we saw some deer running in the fields. Maybe grandfather would believe that the deer did it, but maybe if he saw our footprints in the field, he would know who really did it. It's always so interesting to walk through the corn when you're only about 4 feet high, and you look up and the corn's probably 6 or 7 feet tall, and it makes you feel so small and a little claustrophobic. I do remember walking the cornfields. The rows would go towards the house and away from the house, so when we got fairly close, we could see barns grow larger and larger, and we knew that we were almost at the farmhouse. I remember in autumn corn harvesting time, probably a couple years after the incident of knocking down corn with my brother. When my grandfather had already used a giant combine to harvest the corn, he was out in the field around sunset, everything bathed in a golden light. He was tilling the field in his tractor, gathering up some of the already cut stalks, leftover husks, and stuff like that. By then, he was using a larger tractor, probably a Generation 2 John Deere, like the Model 4430, with a cab that had a heater and air conditioning, soundproofing, rollover protection, and even a stereo. The works. He looked so small getting down from the tractor, and he walked across the field to us a bit and waved hello, still from a distance. I think he knew from seeing us that it was dinner time, and we drove to the house, and I think he pulled his tractor into the barn and came inside, his nose still pink from the chill. Now, after 50 years later from those days, I still love to look at rows of corn when driving down a highway. It excites me to see farmers out in the fields with combines and tractors, harvesting crops. I know how much work it takes, how much risk, how much dependence on rain and weather, and how nice it is to come in from the cold, walk down a dirt road, see the lights on in the house in the distance, getting closer as you walk.